introduce you to our speaker. And he will officially today become our youth and young adult director. It's kind of like an inauguration. You know, I have come into work with me a dynamic, engaging young leader who I believe has a true calling to ministry on his life. So I am very pleased today to introduce you to our youth and young adult director. This is how I think of him, all right? He is the heart-stomping, earth-shocking, awesome drumming, religion-busting, Christ-preaching. Come on, give him a big, warm CBC welcome. Pastor Dariano.
This is kind of the real introduction to me as the youth director, and we came up with the idea where I'm going to do the preaching, and it's kind of an introduction to myself.
I want to start today off by talking a little bit about my life, my story, things I went through, how I found God.
I grew up in the church, and I didn't like anything about it.
When I say I grew up in the church, I mean my parents made me go to church. I really didn't want to go to church. I didn't like getting up that early. It was my weekend. I didn't like the clothes. I didn't like the music. It was all like really boring. I didn't grasp this idea of Christianity. Though I felt like they were trying to do something for my benefit, I felt like I couldn't adhere to all these principles, that I couldn't live up to the standard that was being set on my life.
It felt like a type of bondage to follow these rules. It was a heavy burden to constantly make sure everything was in line, all your ducks were in a row. It was terrible. So I denied God. I said, if this is who you are, this doesn't make sense, and I really don't want anything to do with you.
It didn't explain why I hurt. It didn't explain why I loved. And it didn't explain why I wanted to be loved. So I walked away from the church. I walked away from Christianity. I denied God. In this, I stumbled upon drugs and alcohol.
It was a way I could confidently express myself, confidently talk about things going on inside of me, or really show the sense of humor that I knew I had but I was otherwise too nervous to express. I felt like I could really be myself, so drugs and alcohol became really attractive to me. Well, actually the first time I ever did a drug, I was at a festival called Creation. It's like a Christian Woodstock, and I went with my youth group. And I mean, they're nice kids, you know, but we were just a little reckless, and I didn't know what it was. He had his tooth pulled, and he's like, oh, I got these, and he's like, here's a Percocet. I was like, what's a Percocet? He's like, oh, it just makes you feel good. That was a little testament to like my boldness and my carelessness. I didn't care. He said it made me feel good, and I believed him, so I did it. The first time I drank was with the same kids. It was just having fun. I got really goofy and silly when I drank, and we all had a blast. I guess it wasn't till maybe 17, 18 when things started getting a little worse.
I didn't see how drugs, just smoking a couple joints would lead to a heroin addiction, and I didn't see how drinking a couple beers with the boys in the backyard would lead to alcoholism, but it did.
I ended up finding myself getting to the point of using heroin. And even though my friends were doing coke and stuff, heroin was like the no-no drug. That's just the one thing we're not going to do if you do that, or even worse. And so I hid that from them, and it got bad real fast. And I found myself getting in a lot of trouble, doing things I didn't think I was going to be doing, robbing friends' houses, breaking into their houses, stealing their money, their drugs. I realized I don't know what else to do if I'm not getting high.
There was a point in my life that really opened my eyes. I was was at my apartment in Voorhees with a girlfriend at the time, and unbeknownst to her, at the intensity of my addiction, she walks in, I'm in the bathroom, and she's asking what's going on, and she comes knowing something's up, so I throw away the syringe as best as I can, and she opens the door, and I remember looking at her face, and she steps back, like settling into shock, and it was like her face pales as if the life left her. And as the tears were coming down her face, I just remember saying, if I was any kind of real man, I'd be crying with you right now. But I can't. I can't stop. I knew something had to happen, because if it didn't, I was gonna die.
That was a huge experience that I was never able to shake.
Well, I met Jesse when he was 20 years old. I had just, they hired me here to do counseling.
I was going to him because my parents made me go for counseling, and through that, we kind of developed a friendship.
You know, as the years went by, we had periodic contact.
I would call him periodically, just for some advice, crazy girlfriends, things like that, or, oh, I messed up again.
Jesse came back to the church because he was still searching, and I think he was trying to figure out his life, and you know, the drugs and all that was going on, and he had to get off of those somehow, and that's when he decided to go to Teen Challenge.
Through a series of divine events, I ended up in a program called Teen Challenge. Has anybody heard of Teen Challenge? Yeah. All right. I don't know how much you know about it, but it was probably the craziest thing that ever happened to me. I'm going there thinking I'm going to be a part of these youth group things that I was a part of, and I'm waking up at the crack of dawn, 6 o'clock in the morning, jumping around singing, I got a friend, and I said, you guys are nuts. You guys are crazy. If Jesus was my friend, he would let me sleep. I had questions. I wanted to understand this God thing, and I ended up getting my answers at a worship service. They were playing Jesus Culture, How He Loves Us. And there was a line that says, I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about how He loves us. And I said, how can You love me? I did nothing to give You glory the whole time I was out there. I did nothing but blaspheme Your name. How can You love me? And I felt what was like arms wrapping themselves around me. And I heard a voice that said, I've always loved you. And I've never stopped loving you. And I'm going to use you. And I broke. And I said, I gotta know this God. Wow. I gotta know this God. Because this God didn't have the list. This God didn't say I needed to do these things to be good. He found me in my ugly.
Wow. That's good.
He found me while I was still broken.
I went to visit him in Newark when he was a Teen Challenge. He was in his last 3 months at Newark. And he was just expounding on the scriptures. Like, it just thrilled me to hear him explain things like that. And then he told me, which I already suspected, but I can't, you know, when somebody has a calling to ministry, it's not your place to tell them, it's their place to realize it. He was the one that had to realize that, or I couldn't say anything. But when he told me that day, immediately I thought, if Jesse wants to, I would want him to come to work with me.
When Charlie asked me to come on to the church, we knew there was going to be a lot of work. We knew there was going to be something to have to draw people to the church to let them know we now have a youth group, we now have a youth director, and this is him.
And that's what this Generation Sunday is all about. It is his moment. I will call it, it is his moment. It is the pinnacle of kind of what we're leading up to begin a youth ministry, a young adult ministry, to begin to try to become a multi-generational church.
We're trying to spread the word that there's a lot of changes going on with the church. There's a lot of things happening, and this is just the beginning of it. This is just one element to try and grow the church. So.